So good day, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. We're going to be focusing today around routing and logistics solutions. And you can take a look at our agenda here. We're going to begin by talking about some of the challenges that we've seen with clients in logistics, kind of the top 10 problems that we've encountered both in conversation and in our own application development areas. Then we'll take a look at what Google Maps plus us, AppGeo, brings to the table around logistics. In particular, we'll answer the question, what makes Google different? And 6 ways that Google Maps plus AppGeo is bringing the technology forward through innovation to address some logistic challenges. Then my colleague, Aaron Doucette, will show a couple of applications and 4 real use cases with demonstrations. And he'll talk for a couple of minutes about getting started with Google Maps and how we can help you get going. And then, as Jordan mentioned, we have a bonus today. Google just came out with 2 new Google Maps features. They're in beta versions at the moment. One is dealing with a local context in the Places API, and the other one is dealing with some new customization on map display. And Aaron is going to be giving you a sneak peek of that towards the end of the webinar. So let's begin by framing the problems, some of the challenges around logistics. As I say, we've had a lot of conversations with our clients. We've got quite a bit of experience in addressing logistics and routing applications. And these are the top 10 challenges that we believe are pretty important to people. And hopefully some of these will resonate with some of your operations. So the first one is rising customer expectations. I suspect that you are just as amazed as I am that you can place an order on Amazon on one day and it shows up the next day. Amazon really has raised the bar around logistics and what can be accomplished. And that's had an effect on everybody who's involved in whether it's delivery of goods, whether it's transportation of people, whether it's fleet of repair vehicles or inspections, any type of logistics, there are pretty high customer expectations. Of course, reducing fuel cost and time is always a key objective for operations. And this is in particularly true when you're talking about complicated routing or logistics situations. Many trucks, many vehicles, many stops, and you need to make sure that you're saving time and money. And to balance that, number 3 is to manage your labor costs and relations. Quite often it's important, just as important as saving time and money, to look at balancing the routes that are being assigned to your drivers across your labor force. And perhaps even you may have some labor unions in your area that are helping to drive some of those requirements. So we often see there's a balancing between those 2 categories of objectives. Improving customer service, always a key point. And that's not just, as I say, delivery service, but that could be customers for repair purposes or inspection purposes, any type of logistics scenario. That also gets into on-demand scheduling. Routes are defined for the day and then things change during the day and you've got changes. Well, the customer service is paramount. And it also includes, in many cases, honoring customer time windows. You can only make deliveries in certain times of the day. You can only make repairs at locations in certain times of the day. So all of this goes into improving customer service. Next one is fundamental, and it should be obvious. You cannot deal with traffic delays and wrong addresses and keep your performance high and efficient in a logistics operation. And so I'll be talking in a few minutes about the use of both predictive traffic as well as real-time traffic to address this problem and the importance of having the right address. It is just absolutely fundamental because you're not only got a person out there making the delivery, so you've got human capital that is being spent, but you're also got customers waiting on something. So it's absolutely fundamental to get it right. Passenger management deals with transit systems. So your paratransit, on-demand scheduling, scheduled transit, bus, train, that type of stuff, where passengers must be registered and scheduled and they must be picked up on time, and they must be dropped off on time. It is absolutely critical to get that right, and that's a big challenge for a lot of operations. Likewise, inventory management. This gets into what's the inventory that we're having to deliver. Is it time sensitive, food, medicine? We have to worry about capacities on our vehicles. Do we have the right vehicles, especially fleets with different types of vehicles? If we're running a repair fleet, do we have the right equipment and tools on the vehicle that's being assigned? So there's a pretty significant inventory management that is a big part of the logistics. And all of these can contribute to becoming a big data problem. Many vehicles, many stops. If you're bringing real-time fleet data back into your operations to manage where are your vehicles, you've got all of that GPS traffic coming in. This can turn into a big data problem. And how do you deal with that? How do you scale it? How do you put it on an infrastructure that is reliable? Those types of challenges. Communication with drivers is so important, especially in situations where your routes are changing during the day. You've got to get new information out to your drivers. And likewise, if your drivers run into a situation that, an accident or something, and there's a road closure or traffic delay that nobody knew was happening, they need to be able to come back to dispatch or come back to a supervisor and say, I can't get to where you want me to go. What do you want me to do next? So that's paramount to the operation. And then finally, managing fleet performance. I suspect that many of you working with fleets are interested in the performance of the fleet. Comparing what the optimal routes are against what the actual routes are. Were there deviations made? Looking at things like what's my normalized cost per mile per driver or time per mile per route, and start to look at the efficiencies of my fleet and my resources, and then make some accordingly changes. So managing fleet performance is important. So this is how we kind of frame up the challenges around logistics. And I suspect that some of these, if not many of these, apply to some of your operations. Next slide, please. So I'd like to spend a couple of minutes talking about what Google plus our company, AppGeo, brings to the table around addressing some of those logistic challenges. Let's begin with what makes Google different. Next slide, please. Google has been very much invested in the world of logistics for several years. The Android Auto product captures live data from onboard navigation, onboard systems in vehicles. The Waymo self-driving cars use Google Maps for navigation purposes. And I suspect most people have heard of Waze. If you use Google Maps out on the roadways and you have the traffic turned on, you see the red, green, yellow lines indicating traffic conditions. That's coming from the Waze technology, which Google purchased a few years ago. So Google has been and continues to be very well invested, and we expect them to continue investment in the world of logistics. Next slide, please. Google is all about scalability. I think anybody who uses the Google Cloud for searching, if you go to watch anything on YouTube, you are running on the Google Cloud. That gives you an idea of the reliability and the ability to scale up to handle incredible volumes of data and do it at a performance that is second to none. They advertise 99.9% uptime. And I dare say it's hard to remember when Google goes down. So they are all about scale, which lends itself to addressing some of these logistic challenges that we're talking about. Next slide, please. Probably the number one reason why people think about using Google for any type of mapping-based application is the user experience. Your customers already understand how to read a Google map, just based on the number of people who use Google on the consumer version of Google on a daily basis. And that means that the challenges around user training are minimized, and user application acceptance by your users is quite easy to achieve. Next slide, please. So just kind of a level set on what the Google Maps API is all about. If you haven't heard this before, just a quick overview here. The API is broken into three categories. The Maps API, that's where you put a map on the screen, either a static map or a dynamic map. You can combine your data, third-party data, with the Google base maps vector as well as imagery, and you can stylize, you can customize the way your data is presented on the screen to fit your particular workflow, your particular business use case. That's the Maps API. Routes, which is fundamental to a logistics solution. That's where you get your distances between points, you get your directions for optimal routes, the turn-by-turn directions. And if you are working in a scenario where you're taking live GPS points from your fleet, from your vehicles, and you want to see those on a map to monitor where everybody is at any given time, you use the Roads API to take the GPS, put it on the map, it snaps to the Google Road network and shows you what's going on. And then finally, the Places API. So this is tapping into Google's Places database, which is 150 million plus locations from around the world with deep content. This is the kind of information you see when you run consumer Google Maps and you get information on a restaurant. That's all coming out of their Places database, and you have access to that database for geocoding, which, as I mentioned, is so important to logistic challenges, logistic solutions. Geocoding, autocomplete, those type of APIs are all tapping into the Places. So this is just a very high level of what is represented by the Google Maps platform. Next slide, please. You may have never heard of AppGeo. We've been around for quite a while, as Jordan mentioned. We are all about providing innovation around geospatial information as in form of consulting as well as full-up solutions. We've been in this game for 29 years. Many of those years in serving state, local, and federal government, and the last 6 years a focus around corporations using the Google platform. We've been a premier partner with Google since 2014. We have somewhere around 25 individual certifications between our development teams and our sales teams on both Google Cloud and Google Maps, and we have the partner specialization certification in location-based services. So deep skill sets, lots of years of experience, and ready to assist clients in using the Google Maps platform. Next slide, please. So at this point, I'd like to show you 6 quick examples of how the combination of Google Maps technology combined with our consulting and application development skills can address some of those location challenges. We'll start with just the fundamental here. Google provides the platform, the cloud mapping, both the mapping and routing technology as well as the base maps to support logistics. What do? We take that and we can either, if you want to build something on your own, which many of our clients do, we can provide consulting and make sure you're getting the most value out of your using the APIs. We can also develop high performance apps that address those logistic challenges, that brings together your data, third-party data, maybe coming from disparate systems that you've never combined together before, and build out apps that will scale with data demand as well as user demand. Next slide, please. Number 2, Google is all about real-time traffic data. That, they're using that Waze technology. You can use that if in your routing solutions, and obviously that can help you ensure accurate arrival times. You can get access to both predictive traffic times or real-time traffic times. And we take that information and we can build user-intuitive visualizations of routes for making assignments to your drivers and providing the instructions. We can develop applications that provide that communication. You're going to see some excellent examples here in a few minutes that address the user-intuitiveness of logistic apps that Aaron's going to be showing you. One around food delivery in response to the COVID pandemic, and another one around bus transit systems. So this is real-time, taking into account traffic data is so critical to addressing these challenges. Next slide, please. Google is all about navigation and geocoding, and I mentioned already, geocoding is at the heart of a good logistics solution to make sure that you're getting the most accurate addresses you can provide to your drivers, as well as the turn-by-turn navigation. We take those and we use those to put it on the map, communicate to your drivers, and obviously this is all about minimizing wasted driving time. Another feature that comes out of the Google Maps platform that we can take advantage of is Street View. Y'all have seen Street View when you use the consumer. Well, you can get access to that through the Maps API. So think about this, especially in an urban setting when you're making assignments either for repair or inspection or delivery, and you're giving the driver an address and they go to that address, but everybody knows sometimes in urban settings, having the address, it may still be confusing as to which building, which storefront it is. But what if you put the Street View in front of that driver as well, maybe on a mobile app? So now they've got the address, they know they're at the right location, and they've got a picture to validate, yep, that's where I need to be. And if you combine that with congested urban areas, maybe with one-way streets, you cannot afford your driver missing that location and having to circle back around, which in some cities can take quite a bit of time. So this is all about minimizing wasted driving time. Next slide, please. All right, spoke about the scalability that Google brings to the table here, dealing with large traffic, large data volumes, large user volumes. We have the ability to take advantage of the cloud and build on the cloud. An example that Aaron's going to talk about is the project that we did for Texas DOT around emergency notification of road closures across Texas. And it had a real life use case where during a hurricane period, they were getting over 500,000 user visits a day. And the thing never slowed down, never crashed. So Google is all about scalability, and we have the skill sets to bring that to bear on your challenges. Next slide, please. And of course, the Google experience, that Google user experience with Google Maps lends itself to building out logistic applications, and we can take that and build on that user experience. And one of our key principles when we do application development is to keep the application simple and productive. We don't want to clutter it up with too much stuff. We want to have a nice balance of how to present the information and the things that can be done. And that is you taking advantage of your data and your workflows combined with the Google-based map data and perhaps third-party data to really provide a simple and productive user experience. Next slide. So the last point that I want to talk to is the idea around performance. So Google provides the optimal routing, and they also, as I mentioned, provide the ability to take live data, actual data, maybe live coming in for GPS, maybe after a route has been run, and plot that on the map and be able to calculate the distances and the time. So it's pretty easy to start looking at the deviations, if there are some, between the optimal way to run a route versus what actually took place. And you can take the historical routes over a period of time and start building out an analytic approach, a visualization of those routes, and calculate some KPIs, key performance indicators, cost per mile, time per mile, revenue per mile, if that's relevant to your operations, and identify, maybe through dashboards, through a visualization, identify which routes are not quite the same in terms of performance, cost per mile, for example, as the majority of the routes, and identify where the inefficiencies are. It may be particular drivers you need to be thinking about. It may be particular vehicles. It could be particular time windows. When we have routes through that time of day, everything slows down. It could be particular geographic areas. Very interesting. Every time we send a truck through that area, we slow down. So those are the kinds of inefficiencies that if you can visualize them, you can start to bring into your decision-making processes and adjust your fleet operations so that you can make sure that everything is running as efficiently as possible. Next slide, please. So that's a quick tour through how Google Map technology combined with our innovation, our consulting, can address your location challenges. So I'd like to turn this now over to my colleague, Aaron Doucette, who will show you a few applications and demonstrations built with Google Maps. Aaron?
All right, thank you, Dave. So today we're going to take a look at some of the applications developed by or in part by AppGeo that incorporate the Google Maps platform and have a really strong routing and logistics focus. And it's really now more than ever that many businesses of all sizes are recognizing the importance of bringing more technology and more capability into their delivery and logistics software and practice. I'm sure many of you have been ordering more things from online or maybe getting at home food delivery throughout the pandemic. So it's no question that these are going to continue to be important technologies going forward. And that's in part why we highlighted these two first demos. And as I share these examples, I'd like you to ask yourself how the problems that we're looking at today, how they might align with problems in your own business or organization that you're facing or looking to improve. And I think what you'll discover is that the frameworks that we're presenting here can really cover a lot of ground and actually fit into a lot of different use cases. The first demo we're going to look at today is a transit management application and is really part of a larger story of an organization that's really undergone complete system transformation from the old ways to the new ways, from a hard copy into the cloud. And the second story we're going to look at today is on the Bring Food application for home delivery, which is one of the key ways that AppGeo has actually responded to trying to help people during this ongoing pandemic. So I wanted to take a moment before we dive in too deep here to look and think about transit together, moving people from one place to another. And depending on the size of your city or region or organization, there may be a number of options available, or there may only be a few. But in essentially every case, we have a cross section that falls somewhere on this diagram, and regardless of where it falls, there is always some way in which a map or location intelligence can benefit the ridership and also benefit the organization that is running that system. So whether it be, for example, estimating the arrival time of a train, like we have here in Boston where I'm based, or knowing how far away your Uber driver is from picking you up at your house, kind of the other end of the spectrum. There's always some mappable component and some trackable component because we're dealing with moving assets that are not fixed in position. And today in particular, the example we're going to look at kind of examines a segment that overlaps into more than one category, which means we're having to meet more demands. And that can be thought of as like paratransit, bus transit, but also this idea of demand responsive transport, where in many cases more than ever, we now have an application tied to pick up and drop off, requesting that ride. And these are often vehicles that need to change their routes on a daily basis and accommodate specific needs. And by being able to rapidly make these changes on the fly to meet changing demands, we can improve the experience of passengers and also save money from an organizational perspective on unnecessary driving, getting stuck in traffic, or optimizing even the number of vehicles we have on the road. But the question that comes up is how do we manage all of that information between hundreds of places one can be picked up, maybe hundreds or thousands of destinations, different drivers and different vehicles. That's a lot of information to keep track of. So that's where AppGeo comes in. In this example, we worked with a transit group who had this exact problem. Specifically, they, as a company, are responsible for the transportation of well over 11,000 passengers. This is across dozens of cities and towns, and they have over 2,000 vehicles in their fleet, all different types of vehicles ranging from buses to vans to even smaller type of one-on-one transport. And then you have drivers for all those vehicles as well. So think about the scale of the problem we're looking at. And their journey started several years back with a completely manual process. Annually, they would get together as an organization and essentially using index cards have to figure out routes for each district when it came to schools and assigning drivers and schedules. And it became overwhelming over time and was really kind of a hindrance to their growth as a company. And AppGeo took on this problem by bringing all of that data into the cloud and by storing pickup locations, where drivers are coming from, vehicles, maintenance slots, all in a relational database. That kind of solves that data part of the problem. But how do we visualize it? That's where Google Maps comes into the picture. So as you can see here, we have a kind of dynamic routing on the left-hand side where we have a start location, various pickup spots, and a destination. We want to be able to see that on a map, but we also want to be able to ensure that the route that is being chosen is the fastest, most efficient, avoiding traffic, avoiding closures, especially in this setting where we have precise times that we must arrive at the destination. In the case of a school, for example, that's something that we can do with the platform. And looking at this next slide, a little bit of the application in action. In any transit or even on the delivery side of applications, understanding your pickup spots, your drop-off spots, that is paramount. And in this case, we have over 1,400 individual schools here. But you could imagine that as different businesses, different customer homes. We can then manage that with various filtering mechanisms. And what this application would allow us to do is assign each of those locations to a number of individuals, automatically generate the most efficient route, and also keep track of all of the information going on in the background. For example, they are able to do their payroll and driver credentialing and tracking all in this one application. An example of something we built that really doesn't exist on the shelf in any other format. And speaking of something else, I'd like to share with you what we're doing around the Bring Food application. And this is something that AppGeo developed in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. We worked with a number of tester sites and towns around both Texas and Boston who were running into the problem of we have these food pantries that suddenly we have all of these individuals who can't come in person. We want to keep them out of a high risk situation. Gathering in a small space is not a good place for people right now. But at the same time, how are we going to get these people their food on a regular basis? And what that required was essentially spinning up a home delivery model overnight. And this is something that these small organizations didn't necessarily have the capability for. So AppGeo stepped in to help with the development work around this Bring Food application. And what it allows these food pantries to do is take in their list of recipients, home addresses, Google and AppGeo through this product will optimize the routing based on either number of deliveries or number of drivers or even vehicle capacity. And we'll be able to visualize that as a Google map and even feed the results into an external app in the future for door-to-door navigation. And this is kind of taking some of those top Google Maps platform APIs and really using them for the betterment of society by really helping people out. But you can imagine the same application being used in a for-profit context as well, where we have home deliveries to make. It's again in a very increasing use case for businesses of all sizes, but also business to business transit as well, where you might be providing or stocking your store locations from a central warehouse. And one quote that really struck out to us as we were doing some of our beta testing with partner communities is what takes us hours is now done in under 5 minutes. And to me, that speaks volumes in that these are volunteers that are maybe stepping up to help. They don't want to be spending their time arguing about who is going to drive where and how to get there and figuring out the directions. They want to be spending their time helping people actually doing the task at hand. And that's what this app allows them to do. What I'm going to do now is actually hop into the application to give you a step-by-step look of how it works. You'll be glad to hear you're among the first in the public to actually get to see this operating. It's really something we've developed only over the past few weeks. And we have some new features that have rolled out just today, actually. So it's a very much in development application, and I'm going to show you just how it works. So as I mentioned before, the first step is bringing in that address list. That could be something that is being maintained by the organization, or it could even be generated through something like Google Form where people are submitting their request. I've created a little sample database here we're going to look at today with some random addresses I've chosen from near where I live. And what we first do is just teach the application what each of these fields are, which would be coming in from Excel. This could all be in one row, or in this case, multiple rows. So we're simply defining these headers so the application can run these addresses through the Google Geocode engine. One feature that's actually new now to the application is being able to track capacity. So say you have, just a regular car, it gets filled up when you go to the grocery store for one person. So imagine now delivering for 10. We can take that into account by understanding delivery size as one of our metrics. We can also track attributes that may not be required for the geocoding process, but we may want to see in the end result, such as, all right, where is the person expecting their package to be dropped off? That can be taken through to the final product. So now that we have all that filled out, we are ready to go, and the geocoding will take place. Because we're using the Google geocoding engine, this only takes a matter of seconds for the data I've chosen here. But this again can scale up to cover hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of points in a very efficient process. I'd like to highlight here another example of thinking through these logistics problems from start to finish. Quality control is very important, especially when it comes to people out in the field doing a delivery to an address. What if person typed in the wrong town or the wrong zip code, and the computer did its job, put it where it needed to go, but it's not exactly in the right place? So in this case, let's say that our delivery window, our delivery area is only within the 95 corridor. I can go ahead and take these out of the running so we're not sending someone where they're not supposed to be. Additionally, let's say that this address here, someone accidentally wrote in the wrong town, and I can say for sure this is actually supposed to be in the town of Medford. I can update that, and Google will on the fly correct it. Now we're in the right place. So here we have a couple more parameters to assign. What is our distribution center, or where are all deliveries originating from? For our example here today, I'll put in a supermarket nearby. The nice thing about running through Google is I don't even need to put in the full address. It has already found it here just from the business name. And now we can do either two strategies: max number of routes or the max number of stops per route. So depending on what is your constraint, the size of my vehicle, or say maybe I have 5 volunteers and I want to keep them all busy, we can ensure that we have exactly 5 routes. And now this is where the kind of magic of the application comes in. We've defined our starting location. We have our points, and I'm going to hit optimize routes. And it's going to make exactly 5, since in this case we have 5 drivers. So what you see on the screen now are 5 different color line work with each of the stops in a numbered order. And each of these represents one delivery route in the most efficient possible way to utilize that number of drivers and hit all of the stops. We also have added some arrows even on the screen to ensure that they're going the right direction on the route. And if we were to export this to a spreadsheet, each driver could have their itinerary for the day laid out very clearly. What is essential about this application is things change. What if we went from 5 routes to suddenly our vehicles can now only deliver 7 packages each? Now it's going to take into account those package numbers we had defined earlier and recalculate on the fly. In seconds, we have a whole new itinerary. It's figured out what's most efficient. And this can also take into account things like traffic or closures, especially here in the Boston area. Those two can be issues. So you can see how having a dynamic application is really critical when you have a dynamic business. So I'm happy to have been able to show you this. Again, it's still very new and under construction, but the groups and towns that we've partnered with for this initial demo have been really happy, and we're hoping to develop this further into a full-blown application, not just for this Bring Food initiative, but also for delivery optimization going forward. So we're going to hop back into our presentation here. Dave talked about the Drive Texas application currently in use by the Texas DOT. I think it's a very interesting story in that it really highlights the scalability factor in a way that many applications cannot. And just to give you a little bit of background, it is a statewide tracking system for the entire state of Texas, which is a big state, especially by New England standards. And we are using Google Maps API as some of the underlying technology running the application, among others. And the scalability factor is what ensured the uptime. During Hurricane Harvey in August of 2017, we had multiple millions of visitors to this site as the state was actually using it to broadcast these contraflow evacuation routes where an entire interstate is now one way and they're getting people out of harm's way, such as in the city of Houston, where many of the effects were seen. And I'll do another little video example here. You can see we do have the entire state. This application is tracking at all times all of the construction, both current and planned, as well as closures, accidents, traffic. We have it linked into live camera feeds that you can bring up and see the traffic in real time. And we're also tracking not just icons on the map, but attributes about the construction or the closures. And being able to take this type of information and feed it into, say, long distance logistics or trucking is very critical. Another attribute of this application is the ability to not just visualize the current conditions, but what is going on in the future. As the DOT, they know where the closures are going to be, they know where the construction is going to be in a similar fashion to what you would see on Waze that is user reported. This is the same type of data from a authoritative source. But the main story here for our audience today is really about the scalability, the fact that Google, when coupled with some of the other underlying technology, is able to handle these thousands upon thousands of constantly changing points. Last example for today, in terms of our demos, it is a partnership where Google and UCLA came to us actually saying, we have this need and we're looking for a little bit of help. In this case, we had an extremely capable team of researchers and doctors and scientists out of UCLA, and they were putting together this Stop COVID-19 dashboard, which is a nationwide tracker for the ongoing pandemic on a number of metrics. And they needed a little help getting their idea to the finish line when it came with the visual representation on the map, which is what AppGeo does best. So we were able to provide some of that consulting on the geospatial components to get this up and running. This is something that you all can check out if you want at stopcovid19together.org. If you Google Stop COVID-19 Together, I'm sure you will find it as well. And I believe this is a very impressive use of the Google Maps platform, coupled with these overlays and graphs and dashboarding that you can see here. These are features that are actually running on top of the Maps platform, while not necessarily originating within it. Another area that AppGeo is really proficient in, to show you that the platform can do a lot more than just show some dots on the map. It can really provide a comprehensive dashboard into your data. And in a routing context, you could imagine something like this, where we have maybe live vehicle stats or tracking interstate commerce in real time. This is the level of technology that is capable now with all of that Google goodness underneath. So no matter how simple or complex your application or need is, there's always some way that we can bring our expertise to the table. And that's what I wanted to talk about a little bit more now that we've concluded our demos. And I wanted to touch briefly on how you can take your ideas and bring them to life in the same way that we have seen here coming out of this presentation. And step in doing that is getting started with working with Google Maps platform, getting on the console. And that's a whole lot easier to do when you have a partner who's gone through the process multiple hundreds of times. And that's in large part why this partner program exists, to have a helping hand walking through all the steps, having a dedicated team to help you each step of the way. From there, we can help consult on creating a project, enabling the right API for your task, and provisioning a key, which is the key to tap into all of these different data sets that we've looked at here today. For those of you who are already on the platform, you might be asking, well, that's great, but how can I go further? How can I take what I'm doing and take it to the next level? And when Google put together their platform, it's often coming from a developer-centric point of view in terms of the messaging and what they're able to provide. So what if your organization needs a little bit more help? And again, take what you have and step it up a notch. And that's where our Spatial IQ program for Google Maps comes in. We can work with your existing organization or project team to get your app off the ground, provider experience when it comes to optimizing the APIs and choosing them correctly. There's a whole lot of different ways they can be deployed, and having a lot of experience setting it up for many different companies, we know quite a few ways to save some money in the process as well. We also keep an eye on your usage and look out for spikes or anything abnormal, and make you aware of that as we see it. Going beyond, we are meeting with your organization regularly, ensuring that you have the best practices in play and offering kind of ongoing support. And beyond everything we have on the screen here, we can also offer custom development services if you have a great idea or want to expand on what you have now, but are lacking some of the human resources to get it up and running. There are a lot of technology developers out there in this space, but very few have the geospatial background and cartographic conceptual background that AppGeo has. So when it comes to a mapping-based application, you will be in good hands. And I wanted to wrap up today before Q&A by doing a quick sneak peek at some of the newest announcements from Google. These were just made public knowledge this Monday. So for many of you, I'm sure this will be the first time you're getting to see these, and we are equally as excited to bring you these news. The first is around Maps customization. So for many years with the Maps platform, you had a few basic options, and to get beyond that was a little bit tricky. Google has recognized that customer need and is now in a beta program for taking your maps visually to the next level. So starting with the classic Google Maps that everyone has grown familiar with, we're able to do custom cartography, completely changing colors and streets and labeling. A huge component of this is going to be able to make on-brand applications that fit with your color, your look, your style, and honestly just be something unique. And we can take that further in the sense of being able to customize which icons appear on the map for which type of businesses. This has been a huge request for a long time, being able to more selectively filter what type of icons and markers we're seeing, and also control over labeling. This is something that Google has just rolled out in beta, and we are very excited to get in our customers' hands to create, honestly, a more engaging experience and a more creative experience. We know many of you put a lot of work into your brand, into the user experience, and this is the next generation of Google Maps in that context. The next feature, speaking of context, is called the local context feature, now in beta. This has a little bit less to do with routing and logistics, but it allows you to take a lot of the features that are well loved in the kind of consumer Google Maps application and bring them into your custom app. That includes being able to highlight nearby points of interest close to your search result, and a seamless experience that ensures that users don't have to leave your application to go get the information they need. Huge implications here for the hospitality sector, tourism, as well as real estate, understanding what kind of businesses are in the neighborhood where I might be buying a home, what type of destinations or tourist spots are near a hotel. So really taking that Google Places database and putting it from the perspective of one of your customers. What do they want to know? You're now going to have a whole new way to bring that into your application. So in closing on these two little announcements, I'd like to mention we're planning on doing a more in-depth webinar in the next few weeks here that are going to demo these in a lot more detail. So if either of these sound exciting to you, definitely stay tuned, and we will have information on when that's going to be scheduled. So from there, I'd like to hand it over and begin our Q&A session. I want to thank you all for attending. And again, we will distribute a copy of the recording to everyone who registered. I invite you to check out our events pages. In addition to what we've talked about today, we have a whole calendar of events online coming up and some pretty exciting things. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Jordan to moderate the Q&A.
Great. Thank you, Aaron. So now we will begin the Q&A session. I hope these use cases give you some ideas as they translate to your business workflow. And so we do have the first question that has come in. Hi, guys. Google's gained some notoriety for changing licensing models for APIs, data, and apps. Sometimes they telegraph these changes pretty well, and sometimes they barely communicate at all. Has Google given a clear roadmap for how they'll be evolving Google Maps?
Sure thing. I'll take a little stab at that. I think, honestly, working with a partner is probably the best way to ensure you will be taken care of first and foremost. Often, changes that are coming to the platform are communicated to the partners well ahead of time to get our customers prepared. And I can't speak for Google and how they, communicate their information, but we always have a customer-centric approach when it comes to any changes to the platform or changes to the billing. We helped a number of our customers transfer from the kind of old payment model to what is currently in place. And, for many organizations, that was a pretty big challenge when you're talking about completely changing billing and the frequency and the how it's invoiced, et cetera. That's something AppGeo worked individually with all of our accounts to make sure that transition was smooth. When it comes to feature announcements, again, we are here to help you get the most of the platform, and having a head start on features like the two that we introduced here today, having a chance for us to get familiar with them, ready to offer that one-on-one support, can help customers a lot when they might be seeing it for the first time or looking for a little bit more guidance. And hopefully that answers your question. We are always happy to take it to a bit more detail in a one-on-one conversation. But again, we're here to help you.
Awesome. So I think that answers that question pretty well. Thank you, Aaron. And so I'm going to move along to our next question. Can Google Maps routing APIs integrate with my work order platform?
Yes, and that is an area where AppGeo can definitely help. We've done a lot of work in the government and local government space. Those organizations almost always have some kind of work order management platform where you're talking about a database of activities that need to be performed, who is going to be performing them, when. What Google Maps is adding to the equation is a way to visualize the where, and in this case, how to get there. Now, when it comes to actually building out that interface, how do you marry the two? That's something that a group like AppGeo can actually assist with. We have a lot of experience marrying up different technologies. It's what we've done for most of our existence as a company. So if that's a challenge that you're facing, again, we're happy to take a look at that. Dave, did you have any further comments on that area in particular?
Just briefly, you could, it would be easy to play a scenario where the user receives a work order in some form, and instead of it just being a tabular report, there's an integration right there where a map comes up to show where the work order is located, and immediately they show all the information about it and how to get there, so that the user doesn't have to jump from a couple of, one application to another to prepare to take on that work. And if the user, and another scenario would be is is, I log in on the day. I'm a repairman, for example. I log in and I've got 10 jobs lined up for me for the day. Well, wouldn't it be nice if in those 10 work orders, I can turn on a map and see the 10 locations routed, all ready to go, and I have all the information to get started. So that is a great example of bringing together traditionally disparate systems and putting them into an integrated application to solve that problem, make it as easy as possible for the user.
Thank you, Dave.
Awesome. Thank you.
David. So we're going to move on to our next question, and we do have a few more that have come in already, but that doesn't mean you can't keep asking them as well. This question is, Google recently revised their terms of service to exclude organizations engaged in what they call high-risk activities, such as public safety-related applications. Was this a knee-jerk reaction to something, as in temporary, or do you think this will endure?
Sure. And, AppGeo, we work closely with a lot of public safety agencies. So it's something we've been keeping our eye on. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I'm a sales engineer here at AppGeo, so I don't want to speak out of line when it comes to things like terms of service, which, again, very nitty gritty, very in the details. I will say that anytime there is a change to the terms of service or any of those details, I can just stress working with a partner is a good idea because we can help walk through your use case, line by line, understand where the tricky spots might be and keep you out of trouble. When it comes to this exact example, I don't want to make any statements about their decision making there. But again, when people's lives are on the line, obviously a lot of legal concerns come up. And that might be a better conversation to take offline if you have a specific example. We are constantly, again, analyzing different use cases, how they factor into those TOS possible violations. In many cases, if Google isn't the right fit, we can find another technology provider for that component that is, while still relying on Google for the parts that Google can provide. So, Dave, any thoughts on that one? It's a little
Well,
tricky.
just to emphasize again that that is one of the advantages of working with a partner. We have a Google Partner Manager. In fact, we've been having some conversations around some terms of service questions just recently. So that gives us access into the Google ecosystem of people and get answers to those questions. So yes, if you have a particular use case, bring it to us. We'd love to talk to you about it. And if required, we can take some terms of service questions back to Google.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Aaron. And we're going to move on to the next question now. If a customer wants to replace Google Base Maps with their own data or third-party orthos, how flexible is this?
That's a great question and something that we've actually done quite a lot with. One of the applications that AppGeo has developed over the years is a AppGeo platform. And this is largely sold now to cities and towns. But one of the great features is you start off with a Google base map, but have really unlimited flexibilities to switch to other ortho photos, custom collect aerial imagery, and even in some cases drone imagery. So when it comes to what Google is cool with, that is absolutely on the table. Swapping out the background for anything you want with the touch of a button, but also having the possibility to go back and get that familiar map back. It requires a bit of knowledge about linking these all together, whether it's coming from a streaming data source or hosted data. And as a company with ties to the aerial imagery industry as well, it's something we've explored quite a lot. So we'd be happy to get in touch to talk about that in a little more detail if you wanted to after the webinar.
Great, thank you, Aaron. So the next question that has come in, how does Google Maps platform compare to Esri tools?
Sure thing. And this is a question that we do get a lot. Esri has long time been the kind of big name in geospatial technology. But here at AppGeo, we've been able to kind of get a holistic look at the world at large and where some of these other vendors are really showing advantages and where each kind of platform shines. And doing a compare contrast, can be difficult because it's not really an apples to apples comparison. Things that Google is bringing to the table are not your kind of traditional cartography and GIS analysis functions, but more their key value add is the data. You have the data set of these millions and millions of places. You have live traffic, and the APIs are effective ways to tap into that data and display it in a very efficient manner. So, key advantages with Google, I think number one, that geocoding accuracy. For example, being able to feed in like a partial address, or the autocomplete where I had to type, one word and it found the grocery store because it knew where I was looking and it filled in the rest. Those are things that aren't as common outside of the Google platform. And yeah, again, what AppGeo has done time and time again is taken, customers who are maybe within an Esri environment and added on connectivity to expose that data to the public through the Google Maps platform. So it's never usually a case of completely switching over, but more augmenting your existing environment with the right tool for the job. And I think the examples that we looked at today kind of demonstrate where that can be the case. So hopefully that helps. And again, feel free to email if you have additional questions on that. Any other comments quickly, Dave?
Just scalability and familiarity with the use with the Google Maps. Those are two very strong points that we hear people talk about some of the benefits of doing these type of applications on top of Google.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, I think it's about time that we wrap this session up now. And on behalf of everyone at AppGeo, I'd like to thank everybody again for attending, and I hope that you do join us for more upcoming webinars. So thank you very much. And any final words from the presenters as well?
I'll add one more quick note. We do have a great guide on our website. If you go to appgeo.com, it's on Maps for Business is the page, but you can find it from the homepage. It is looking at how to choose the right API or combination of APIs. And we think that's a pretty helpful download that we put up there for free to get you thinking about which API fits which use case. We encourage you to check that out. We can also send it along via email when we send the recording out.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining once again, and we hope you have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.